Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. Yeah, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting lighting things ablaze.
Boom!
Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Did you know her?
No, Oh, wait. Was she a great big fat person?
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here coming at you live from my studio/RV dining room located directly inside America. Welcome back, folks, to the interwebs. Thanks again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. I am your host of Operation GCD, JJ Vance here, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president. So, anyhow, welcome back, folks, to the interwebs. I will be your pilot and navigator here tonight for this shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. And I'm not gonna lie to you, folks, to the interwebs, got a real barn burner here on deck for y'all tonight. It's the ongoing tales of the life and crimes of Muppet Mikey Aquino, everyone's favorite psychological warfare, psyops to mind war, Nazi Satanists. They say Green Beret. I argue, nah. I'd like to see some documentation of this fat, doughy bastard passing any sort of physical fitness exam, but it is the anatomy of the Satanic Panic, and we are indeed, folks, if you're not aware of this, folks, to the interwebs, we are indeed in year 45 of that panic. Of course, that is what the Nazi Satanists want you to believe, at least, because as we've unpacked here in previous editions here, previous volumes here on Thursdaze, on Satan Thursdays here on Operation GCD, and that is phase one started the first time we hear Satanic Panic, July 15th, 1975, Denver, Colorado. And those tales surround some evangelical dudes who were, guys, fellas, if you will, who claimed to have been former satanic priests. It's Mike Warnke and John Todd. They would, prove to be none of the above, still Satanists in large part. Pardon me. And in John Todd's case, a kid diddler. Yeah. A Nazi at that rate. Nazi Satanist kid diddlers. Oh, look, that's the typical type of characters we find around old Muppet Mikey here. But that phase one is interesting because it's a lot of back to the drawing board, if you will. And one thing we see a couple times in that phase one from 1975 to 1980 is a large volume of fucking murder. Yeah. So we'll be getting into that here tonight. Once you plot out the murders, all these satanic serial killers, under the thesis of Dave McGowan's program to kill, the Phoenix program come home. Satanic serial killers, the Phoenix program come home. And lo and behold, that's what we find all around old Muppet Mikey there. He is the Phoenix program guy who weaponized religions such as Buddhism and whatnot over there in Southeast Asia against the locals and waged terror on them. Well, I would argue, as based upon his own statements and actions would yield, the evidence exhibits there, old Muppet Mikey did the same thing here in America, weaponizing Christianity. Satanic serial killers. And then again, that is the thesis of McGowan's. And one thing we see grow out of this same time period in phase one, and the evolutions there, is the Federal Bureau of Investigations, Behavioral Sciences Unit, Behavioral Analysis Unit. They changed the name over time there, but nonetheless, oftentimes I describe to folks, if you realize the FBI's, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, as they call themselves, if you realize that their actual true mission statement is to uninvestigate things, well, then you'll never be disappointed in their activities. Because time after time, that's all they do is uninvestigate things. And we see that here with the serial killers, right? So the Behavioral Analysis Unit gives us the term serial killer. Well, they coined that for us. Thank them for that. And then they tell us how these folks operate. However, as McGowan points out in Program to Kill, and we'll go over some of those characteristics, the mode of operations, the modus operandi. Yes, sir. Good to see you there, Troublemaker Jonah. As McGowan cites, it's all bullshit. You know, they're not, you know, they're uninvestigating it. So, but it's interesting to plot out their evolutions of activities from their onset in 1972 to 1976 to 1980. So, and that's phase 2, 1980. So, phase 2 again is back to the drawing board in a lot of these things, and we see that with these characters out of the Federal Bureau of Uninvestigations. This is the same unit that brings us the landing report. That's phase 3 in 1992. You know, the uninvestigated report on you know, satanic murder and ritual sacrifices of animals and kid diddling, satanic ritual abuse. They say it never happened. Well, typical. That's what they're known for, uninvestigating things. You know, meanwhile, we're getting all these false profiles and the celebration of these assholes from the Silence of the Lambs. And I did hear, in fact, she was a great big fat person. But we see that's celebrating the same unit and this Mindhunter nonsense. We see the Netflix series Mindhunter. That's celebrating the same nonsense. And if you ask me, they're all a bunch of fucking clowns. Not only that, one of the characters that out of this unit, one of the integral characters, Robert Ressler, he was in the Boy Scouts with John Wayne Gacy. He knew John Wayne Gacy like real well. Yeah. So all I'm saying is all these fucking people know each other, folks. That's all I keep saying. And again, we're sold a false profile of these serial killers by a guy who grew up with John Wayne Gacy. Now, I'm not implicating Robert Ressler in any involvement directly involved with Gacy and gang, but let's be honest about the situation. A lot more is known today about Gacy that's never established in any reports by this behavioral analysis or science unit. The connections to John Norman to the Norman the Candyman gang. You know, the clown, the Candyman business. So establishing this network, Dean Coral, John Norman, establishing this network of kid diddling, you know, and it's always prostitution around these rings as well. And, you know, and they're selling these kids, and we see that with the cards and everything that, you know, homeboy gets busted in Texas and then pops up there in Chicago with a whole new set of like 10,000 note cards. Get the fuck out of here, dude. That's a lot of note cards. But that they left that out of their report. You know, so there's a lot of those kind of things. Again, we're sold a false profile by folks who know these folks. It's fucking weird. We live in, and you know, these points in time, folks, of the interwebs, in my brain hole, you know, I'm often remind myself we live in a Muppet world, and that's when I say, cue the Muppet chorus. Oh, is our channel here? I'm way behind on the chat here, folks, but I do thank y'all for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD on these matters of satanic panic. I'm real panicked right now. Oh shit, it is RR. My apologies. How dare I miss the esteemed guest? RR, you tell the folks down at Langley I said you can go fuck yourselves. All right, buddy. Thanks for showing up, though. Anyhow, Kane B, purge in question. Purge nowhere known, but usually on Mondays on around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Find myself coasting with Kane B there on his Purge channel on YouTube, talking, you know, type 2 diabetes talk, some fast food news, and the occasional Idaho 4 conversation. Anyhow, these matters of the satanic panic, if folks don't realize how much these folks are celebrated, the behavioral analysis fuckers, Muppets there, the FBI, well, I don't know why. They haven't solved shit. They give us a false profile. Meanwhile, while they're doing this, they're celebrating themselves. They're, you know, double Dutch ruddering themselves all around the TV channels, the documentaries, the Netflixes. They didn't realize we're under a panic. You know, we're sold that same panic through other same, you know, mechanisms of communications, podcasts, documentaries, TV shows, newspapers, magazines, all of them telling us the same script we've heard out of Michael Aquino himself and the Geraldo show in 87, and the email communications with Dave McGowan telling him, hey Dave, you're programmed to kill shit, where you're saying I'm responsible for bringing a bunch of serial killers home, satanic style. You're all wrong, bud. Yeah, well, you know, pump the brakes there, Mike. Pump the brakes. But it's the same script time after time, and it is the Nazi Satanist telemarketing script. And here it is right here. You all forgot what that is. Let me refresh your memories.
Insert is what people refer to based on some lectures that were run by an individual whose name is Ted Gunderson of the Finders cult. Now, Ted Gunderson,
he wasn't part of the Finders cult, was he?
No. So
he was former head of the FBI in Los Angeles, I thought.
That's right. Yeah, worked there for about 20 years or so. He retired in 1979, and he gets through a series of events.
My apologies, folks. I labeled that one wrong. That's about Ted. You know Ted. Mike Aquino's buddy Ted. You know, they used to talk every night on the phone, according to McMartin preschool victim's mother, Jackie McGauley, when Ted infiltrated her home to shitcoat that affair. She would later not have anything nice to say about old Ted. I don't know if this was before or after the laser attack. Maybe the lasers got Ted.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
They got Ted twice, folks. We all need to stay vigilant, including our channel. You too, bud. Don't think you're safe. They might get you with the lasers too. They got Ted twice. So, but we do get that same telemarketing script of all these same folks at the Federal Bureau of Investigations is selling us this nonsensical script. We also see them selling us a nonsensical script from not only the initial onset or profile of serial killers and then the landing report 92, but then we also see the same folks involved in perpetrating further propaganda on these matters in the evolution of these satanic serial killings, these ritual human sacrifices, in phase 4, 2008, with the smiley face killing report, the Midwest River drownings. It's the same uninvestigatory nonsense. We've kind of highlighted some of that in the past. We'll be unpacking that more here as we go through these different phases. But tonight, it's phase 1. We see how the behavioral analysis evolves into this profile of serial killers. We see who provides that to us. Then we're going to look at some of the murders that are going on, the uptick. Because once you start mapping out all of these matters, folks, you put them on, you look at them, right? You put them out there on a map and look at them. You start realizing, well, you start realizing why they have to evolve their operations, because shit's getting fucking wild. The warfare they're waging on America, the PSYOP, well, PSYOPs to mind more, if you will, but it is the Phoenix program come home, and the PSYOPs to mind more, their propaganda machine around it. But, looking here back in the 1960s and through essentially their 1980 right here, we see a massive increase. We don't have anything really before that. And then all of a sudden, Muppet Mikey and Bill Colby, hey, there you go, our channel. They come back to America, and suddenly we get satanic serial killers everywhere. And by the late 70s here, with the Sons of Sam and Otis Toole, and you can see that, Ted Bundy, this is not an all-inclusive list. I just want to paint a picture here of the activities that would cause the evolution of their bullshit. The propaganda from the Nazi Satanist telemarketing script, and also the propaganda we get around this whole Mindhunter nonsense. Again, sold to us by one of John Wayne Gacy's childhood friends, apparently. And you don't got to take my word for that. We'll listen to him say that himself, Robert Ressler. But let's listen to that telemarketing script, refresh y'all's memory on that.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
In the trailer, it mentioned a book called Michelle Remembers. Can you tell us about that book, Michelle Remembers, Sean?
Yeah, I grew up in Victoria, so Michelle Remembers is by two authors from Victoria.
Which some Canadian psychiatrist said that his wife, under hypnosis, had recalled being mangled, by the Church of Satan when she was a kid. Well, we never had any Church of Satan in Canada.
Station at the preschool. The author of Michelle Remembers, co-author of Michelle Remembers, Lawrence Pazder, comes to speak to the parents about the crimes of satanic ritual abuse and what to look for and that type of thing. So you have all the makings of a moral panic, and then Ted Gunderson comes in too.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
The reason that it fizzled out as a fad, finally the FBI did a major study on the whole notion of satanic child abuse and just said this whole thing is a crock, and there's never been one verified instance of it anywhere.
I personally come from a really cynical, skeptical family. So, like, there's a couple characters in the film that I think people can learn a lot from: the FBI agent Ken Lanning and the investigative journalist Debbie Nathan. I think everyone needs some more skepticism in their lives. Ask people questions, ask why, right? And also take the time to think.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
Martin, and you can see, because this comes into play later on, Ted Gunderson claimed to find tunnels underground in McMartin, but it seems if kids were talking about tunnels at McMartin, there were these colorful boxes that were built by one of the people who ran the McMartin preschool, and they would make these tunnels that the kids could go through. They would usually put them in this kind of horseshoe formation, and they could crawl about through the boxes. So those are the real tunnels of McMartin.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
Excellent point there, Uncle Ted. Watch out for them laser beams. They got old laser tag Ted. But yeah, dude, the common pattern with that Muppet is that nothing gets resolved. There's no accountability. He deters all accountability, including those tunnels. Everyone credits him for being anything a part of them tunnels. Jackie McGauley, the mother herself, we saw in her own statement, says nope, never a part of it. Kept trying to be a part of it. In fact, after she hired that archaeological team who did that report from UCLA, the same fucking day, Ted takes out the LA Times and a bunch of other parents from McMartin with fucking shovels the day prior to that archaeological team showing up. So that is the fucking circus show that old laser tag Ted puts on. But the behavioral analysis unit shouldn't be surprised that, we get, Ted wasn't part of that unit, but he was, he thought he was going to be the next FBI director. He was J. Edgar Hoover's little underling. He wrote a letter to J. Edgar Hoover back in the 1950s. Circa 52, I think it was, saying he wanted to be an FBI agent, and that, Hoover's like, shit, I love it. People who want to be FBI agents, you're hired. And then he became J. Edgar Hoover's right-hand man for the next 20 years. True story. He was involved in all matters from parapolitical nonsense from 1952 to 72. Anything Hoover was involved in around, old Ted there was present for duty, including the whole JFK situation. These are Ted's own statements. We'll unpack more in the future on a further case study of old laser tag Ted. But he was a man who was up in power in the FBI. The same unit here we're talking, the behavioral analysis, behavioral science folks. I got a brief introduction of who those Muppets are.
At the time, these ideas were met with skepticism. Many veteran investigators dismissed profiling as voodoo for cops, an unreliable method based on gut instinct, not hard evidence. But Teton and Mulaney didn't just theorize. They tested. They began using case studies, solved and unsolved crimes, to reverse engineer offender behaviors and compare them to known suspects. When their predictions matched, they refined their approach. When they didn't, they adjusted the model. Soon, law enforcement departments across the country were asking the BSU to consult on real cases, especially those with no obvious motive, no leads, and seemingly irrational violence. And the surprising part? The profiles worked. Time after time, Teton...
That's what they say. Like, it's like they tell you like the whole cough jab, the jab thing. Like, oh, it works. Yeah, go fuck yourselves. We'll look at the details because again, you can say it works. Well, then you look at the details and you're like, wait a second here, buddy. What the fuck are you talking about? Because again, we can look to see, and again, if it's Gacy or Bundy, because they did this whole campaign like, oh, we're going to go meet with all these serial killers. We're going to build these profiles. Again, they're absent are a lot of key details from all their profiles, And again, we can now when we're looking at these things geographically and temporally and spatially, time and geographically speaking, mapping them out here. So we have been doing here, folks, and as we're continuing to do, is I got this little fun-filled chart here. I don't want to bore folks with PowerPoints and charts, but it helps paint a more cogent sight picture in my brain hole. And we see these pockets of activity in the Fort Devers incident, which is strikingly similar to the satanic cult that murdered Captain Jeffrey McDonald, the Special Forces Green Beret medical doctor in 1970 on Fort Bragg. Oh, shit, who was there at the same Special Warfare Center? Oh, Michael Aquino, go figure. It's always the wake of his activities that interest me there. He's like, oh, we didn't do nothing. I didn't do shit. And then and there's a lot of murder that follows him for some reason. That's strange. And again, he's always setting up these cell networks. And we heard him talk about how he sets up cell networks for the Phoenix program, before he came home, courtesy of Bill Colby and his queers, tell those folks at Langley to go fuck themselves. The matters at hand, though, we see, these things bore out. Dave McGowan was right. The Phoenix program did come in. We can start seeing the onslaught of terror, weaponized Christianity through the Satan shit. Onslaught of terror coming on since 1966 and onward. And the uptick there in the 70s. And again, as the late 70s progressed, there's an incident there we've covered briefly out of the Fall River, Massachusetts, the Bridgewater Triangle, as they call it. The place today where my former wannabe PR rep and multi-state transpocalypse mind-controlled assassin, a fellow who's trying to out-JJ me, but I'll definitely have none of that. Jared Revisa, although he did change his name to Jared Jones. But the media still calls him Jared Revisa. His court cases are not public for some reason. He allegedly sits in the Bridgewater State Mental Hospital, which is right outside of Fall River. So again, these pockets of activity may still continue today because that's the same location that let Nathaniel Bar-Jonah out back in 1992. He had been in there in 1978 for, kidnapping, raping, and attempting to murder young boys. He told the judge in 92 he's going to do it again. He's going to eat them too. And no, you must be kidding there, Nate. So we'll just let you out. And he did the same thing 2 weeks later. And then they shipped him on to Montana, where in 2001, I came face to face with that kid-diddling, cannibalistic, psychopathic serial killer. And he may or may not have fed me human meat burger at the local Hardee's in Great Falls, Montana in 2000. But he came from the same area. And then that same time frame as the Fall River Satanic cult murders in 1978, 79 there. He's a recruit. He's an argument can be made. Old Nathaniel Bar-Jonah is indeed making a recruiter of young boys for a cult. There's certainly a lot of ritualistic Satanism business around every aspect of his situations, both in Massachusetts and in Montana. Nonetheless, it is interesting because then you also have the Fort Devers incident. Again, comparison to the Fort Bragg Jeffrey McDonald incident, they're almost the same damn thing. And it also is, again, another Green Beret. So these things are interesting when you look at the evolution, again, of not only the propaganda, the telemarketing script. Michelle remembers, oh, you believe in fucking tunnels and McMartin? You must be a moron. You must not have read the landing report. You believe in Satanism? Yeah, okay. This is the telemarketing script. So, but meanwhile, we have a lot of fucking satanic murders popping off, a lot of satanic ritual sacrifice of animals, and a lot of satanic ritual abuse, not only on the military installations. So, but it is the interesting aspects of this development of this idea of a serial killer that we're really going over tonight, folks. So thank you all for joining me here tonight. Get a little GCD, even you Muppets down at Langley, our channeling gang. And again, speaking of, the clown show that we're discussing, their ideas of a serial killer and how they're always right, according to how they sell it to folks in the media today, right? Well, I argue it's a clown show.
He said you can get away with a lot of things when you're behaving as a clown because people see you as something funny. They see you as something as amusing. They don't know what's beneath the grease paint. They don't know what's beneath the cloth. He said clowns can get away with murder.
John Wayne.
And that's Robert Ressler. He grew up with John Wayne Gacy. They're in the Boy Scouts together. You ain't got to take my word for it.
Ressler says that Mindhunter.
That ain't it.
For 10 years, starting in 1979, Ressler interviewed Gacy in prison. Ressler was surprised to learn that he had grown up 4 blocks from the killer in suburban Chicago. Gacy even remembered delivering groceries to the Ressler family, recalling in detail the distinctive flower pots that Ressler's mother used. Gacy also had darker recollections. He described for Ressler a turbulent relationship with his father. Ressler was...
Again, the guy who brings us the term serial killer and the profile in which is bullshit as borne out by the facts. And again, as cited by McGowan and Programmed to Kill. So we'll compare that profile. McGowan's statements, some of the known knowns, the facts, if you will, and the known unknowns, because as we're false alarm, as we're talking about, psychopaths and serial killers, I like to, get myself in the mindset of a psychopath.
As we know, there are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't.
You ain't kidding there, Uncle Ted. Yes, sir. There's a ton more to Randy Weaver. He's got a very sheep dip kind of Army profile background. He was stationed in Fort Bragg. Some of the known knowns of Randy Weaver, we do know he had bomb training, which is weird for an admin troop, as they claim he was at Fort Bragg. Oh, weird. He was there in 1970. Well, that's strange. Same time as the McDonald's situation and Michael Aquino. Oh, and that's strange. More of Colby's queers, those Phoenix program, Air America drug traffickers, folks that like to do a lot of things in the name of fighting communism. We're going to import all these drugs to America and murk a bunch of civilians, women, and children. Man, we're fighting communism. Salute to you there, RR. Anyhow, we see that the man who ends the Ruby Ridge situation is Colby queer Bo Gritz. He's an undercover agent for the FBI in the PatCon operations, along with a different Colby queer, an unidentified one, who's a former Special Forces guy, which I would argue and have argued is indeed Timothy McVeigh. Is the blanked out name there, the redacted name. I like to play a little bit of fill in the blanks there, and it works out well when you know who is the other retired Special Forces guy listed in the PatCon operation as an undercover agent. But Randy Weaver in the 1980s was running around with John Todd, that fake evangelical preacher dude who was he said he's a former satanic priest. Still, he was current the entire time, diddling folks for many years by all the records. He finally went to prison for it in 1988, died there in 2004. But despite that, his buddy Fritz Springmeier, also another Nazi fellow from that Aryan Nations compound, he would say, he's also a domestic terrorist, bombing shit, no big deal. According to some folks, apparently. Anyway, he, Victor E. Schoof, Fritz Springmeier. Son of a CIA agent, went to West Point on recommendations from Bob Dole. Anyhow, so yeah, there's a lot more to Randy Weaver because he's running around with John Todd in the 1980s. What's that about? So there's a lot more to a lot of those things around that Aryan Nations compound. A lot of Colby's queers activities up there. Just saying. Anyhow, so when we're looking at all of these matters and that, again, that situation of evolving these things from that 1975 to 1980 phase 1 to phase 2, and it is phase 2 where we finally get to meet Laser Tag Ted.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
They got him twice, folks. They got Ted twice. And he came on the scene there in 1980 at the beginning of phase 2 of the Satanic Panic, saying, oh, Satanism, I don't know anything about Satanism. And then he repeated that phrase for the next 30 some odd years. But that's Laser Tag Ted for you. And he's a character. I'll be honest with you. He's a character. So, but looking at that again, the evolution of these activities and why they would have to evolve them. That Fall River cult there around the Bridgewater situation, very interesting. Because again, the judge let Nathaniel Barjona out of that mental institution, despite Nathaniel Barjona telling the judge, the prosecutor, his own attorney, writing it down apparently and drawing shit about it, that he was going to kidnap, rape, diddle, rape, murder, and murk and eat young boys. And sure shit, 2 weeks later he did. But that judge that let him out was the same judge that was assigned as a special prosecutor to let Teddy Kennedy off on that whole Chappaquiddick affair. That whole Process Church Merkin cover-up from the RFK 1968 presidential campaign where that staffer that drowned in that car that Teddy drove off the bridge and just went home and went to sleep that night in June of 69, I believe it was, July 69. Drove right off the bridge, just went home, went to sleep, went to the police later, said, oh, I think I might have killed somebody. And the judge said, you know what, Ted, you did kill someone, but it's no big deal. We'll just suspend your driver's license for 6 months. So that's the same guy that would let Nathaniel Barjona out, despite Barjona telling him, look, Judge, definitely going to do all these things I did before, and I'm going to do a lot more of them. And he's like, nah, dude, you must be kidding. So anyhow, that Fall River cult, the guy, I would argue, is a very interesting case study because not only we can see the uptick in activity, there's folks, documentarians and the initial investigator in that situation back there in 78 and 79 in the Bridgewater region of Massachusetts, Fall River, Massachusetts specifically. The investigator and other folks in that region say that guy was a fall guy. A fellow by the name of Drew. He's a fall guy, and there's a very powerful cult still in operation up there today. So it's very interesting relative to the Nathaniel Barjona details and, old Buffalo Jared there. And folks can check out those tales on Operation GCD Sundays, Volume 1 and disregard Volume 2 and Volume 3. So I tell those tales of Buffalo Jared and my interactions with Nathaniel Barjona there. But it is interesting, the epicenter of activity and then the parties that are involved, because I always say process folks are going to process. And that Chappaquiddick victim had a lot to say about that presidential campaign, where the process was surrounded by that whole, murking of RFK in June of 68. And she was his chief staffer. So a lot to say about that. And speaking of that June of 68 situation, and the presidential campaign of RFK out in Los Angeles, he had not one, but two, and I'm not sure about lasers, but two, quote unquote, satanic serial killers on his presidential campaign out there. One of which they got awarded by the campaign for notable service. And that's on and above the Manson family situation there, because you had Tate and Polanski on that same campaign in Los Angeles County. So I don't know what the fuck's going on there, but a lot of process shit. But nonetheless, coast to coast, we see it all connected back to around a lot of the same satanic shit. In that Fall River situation, old boy just got himself access to the secret documents, as they're calling them. Yeah, about a month ago here, 2 months ago now, the Appeal Innocence Project, I believe it was, or a contingent thereof, was appealing this dude's case. There's no evidence against this guy. It's quite a ridiculous case. We'll get into some of those details, but for folks who aren't familiar with that case, here's a reminder.
In the late 1970s, the blue-collar town of Fall River, Mass. became the unlikely backdrop for a series of brutal murders. And these crimes, which would go on to be linked to a satanic cult, marked the beginning of the infamous Satanic Panic era in America. If you're unaware what that era is exactly, essentially, it was sort of a mass hysteria that slowly crept into the public consciousness. The reason why was a mix of factors. Movies like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, and The Omen becoming huge box office hits, heavy metal music becoming mainstream, and various articles and crimes coming forth, claiming that underneath the wonderful America we all know and love was a dark and sinister force at play. In Fall River, the horror all began on the night of October 13, 1979, with the murder of 17-year-old Doreen Levesque.
So we'll get into more of those details. Like I said, the guy they put in there, and they said he was the leader of a satanic cult. There's a lot of satanic ritual shit there, recognized by the lead investigator who wanted nothing to do with a documentary on the subject. He would later appear in the Bridgewater Triangle documentary on, I seen it on Amazon Prime, but you can probably find it anywhere. I'll put a link in the show notes, but he's on there talking about it. But there's a previous documentary specifically just on these murders, and he didn't want nothing to do with it. And we'll listen to some statements by that documentarian filmmaker saying this guy didn't want nothing to do with it. And then he was told to stay away from it because the cult was very powerful and still in operation. And again, it makes you wonder, because they're letting folks out like Nathaniel Barjona up there multiple times. And on top of that, the only evidence they have against Drew in this case, the guy in prison who just got access to secret files. I don't know what fucking secret files means. I can't find a clear definition of that, but his attorneys just got secret files never disclosed to his previous defense. So I'm assuming that didn't make the behavioral analysis unit's report, because they cite that case as being one of the integral things, not only the son of Sam, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, but that one in specific that's often ignored as being an integral part of their evolution of their activities at the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Sciences Analysis Muppet unit there. But that dude, how do you have secret documents, dude? What is this? So that's what I'm saying. Like, time after time, in each one of these cases, things are obfuscated, right? And in those cases, it's even further obfuscated because they convicted him of one murder by saying he had committed this other murder, but then they provided no evidence of the other murder. But it was all contingent upon the previous murder of why he committed the second murder to shut the lady up. There were a couple of prostitutes that worked for him, apparently, in his little satanic cult prostitution ring. Nonetheless, the lady that testified against him, again, no physical evidence at all. No one could put him at any scene. He actually had exculpatory evidence showing he was elsewhere at the time. So one of those two murders, the state said, we don't give a fuck. And we see that pattern a lot, right? Ignoring obvious evidence of exculpatory evidence and saying, no, that's our dude. So it does speak to this nature of a powerful operation. And again, these geographical centers, I would argue, based upon the pattern and known knowns, that is a fact, one of the geographical centers to this day. And this is, this was 1978 and 79, but, there was another murder. There was 3 murders. The law enforcement and journalists all were calling it a serial killer. So again, this was a new term invented by Robert Ressler at that very same time in 1978. So, John Wayne Gacy's friend from the Boy Scouts. So we'll be getting into that here, folks, at the interweb. So I do thank you all for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. I'm way behind any sort of commentary, but I do appreciate your comments and in time and concerns here. Baking recipes if you got some of those, but anyway, it's I love America. It's my first love, Lady Liberty. Anyhow, it's literally, I do bleed red, white, and blue. Literally, I mean, according to my tattoos, at least, it's the appearance of bleeding red, white, and blue. Anyhow, I also have the values in which this nation was founded upon tattooed to my body. So there's by no guess that I do in fact love America. But I do appreciate the commentary and on my shirt here. But folks at the interwebs, thank you again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD on these matters of the satanic panic in year 45 of this panic. We got to watch out, folks. You got to watch out for lasers. You got to watch out for panics. Those are indeed the Satanists we're looking for, despite Mike Lucchino's Star Wars approach to life is he's a fucking Jedi. These are not the Satanists you're looking for. Well, I think you got it wrong there, Mike. I believe indeed these are the Nazi Satanists we're looking for. And they're, I agree with from the files of Ed Sanders, looking through those files in his archives at Princeton. I literally laughed out loud when I came across they got a little butthurt with me because it's a library and it's the archive section, which means they're even crustier than the normal section. When you're in the sub basement sections of a library, it gets crustier, I think, as you get lower in the sub basements. But they were super crusty there, and nonetheless, I laughed so hard out loud because it was hilarious. Because on the folder of Ed Sanders' folder, he wrote, "The process people are everywhere." So I don't think he was wrong. And again, that would have been 1975 or so. I think I estimated was the scribbling of that note by author Ed Sanders, author of The Family, the kind of the initial premier study of the Manson situation from a man who was on the ground there, contemporary to the situation, and knew some of those folks because he came from the beatnik movement. Anyhow, I'm just saying, a lot of folks think Ed Sanders was wrong. Ed Sanders was right. Maury Terry was right. Dave McGowan was right. And again, we'll look at his analysis of the behavioral analysis unit, his analysis of their analysis, and we'll see it's bullshit. And again, brought to us by friends of John Wayne Gacy. And again, he's an interesting study in himself. Not only does he own this construction company, that's weird. Israel Keyes owned this construction company. That Nazi satanic serial killer who waged terror on America and connected to that same Aryan Nations compound. Oh, that's strange. But anyhow, we see Gacy's a major figure in the JCs. He meets with, in fact, he's the JC Diddler of the Year. I'm not sure what they call it, but which gets him a dinner and a photograph with Rosalind Carter. So we're talking the same time frame here. I believe that was in 1978 when that happened. So we're talking about the same time frame, these evolutions of phase 1 into phase 2. And, we see the FBI's bullshitting people. We see we got the fake limited hangout kind of characters of John Todd and Mike Warnke that are, we don't find out later publicly that these are, Muppets. But nonetheless, we see try to put all these factors into one sight picture, make a cogent sight picture, that is, and we can see that this is a well orchestrated, well manufactured, well financed operation. This satanic panic, that is, and our year 45 of it. I mean, I'm pretty panicked. It's been my whole life has been a panic, apparently. But these indeed are matters that are interesting because as I was going over in the Operation GCD, an occult and esoteric film review of the 1999 cinematic Satanist shit show, The Ninth Gate, Roman Polanski, that kid diddler, and the old process, that is, and the new process with Johnny Depp, bringing us more Satan shit and apocalyptic shit in 1999 at the time in which we're all panicked. I mean, I don't know if they realized we were in a panic at that time, but we see them celebrating the Satan shit. We see them celebrating these assholes at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, these damn Muppets who tell us a very incorrect profile of a serial killer. And again, one of those Muppets grew up with one of those serial killers. So I do find that to be an interesting factor in the well, not it's relevant. I would say it. All these fuckers know each other. I keep repeating that. And again, we find that time after time. So anyhow, folks of the interwebs, catch you over on the other side here on Patreon side, patreon.com/Operation GCD. Thank you all again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. And if you catch this broadcast in the future, pop on over there and come on down. And tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times, Operation GCD Fridays. My Operation GCD Muppet Factory has been on strike, apparently. Those union communist bastards. They're on a union strike, I think. I'll have to deal with that. And then Operation GCD Sundays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. Grunge Horror with the tales of the Foo Fighters doing a tale about some ritual human sacrifices about a month or so before their drummer dies. So that's fucking intriguing, man. So anyhow, thank you all again for joining me. Catch you folks, Operation GCD Patreon subscribers. Thank you all for your support. See you over there on Patreon here in a few moments. Let me catch up on the last few chats here before I yes, still want a Michael Aquino Muppet. Well, I'm happy to pump out some more Muppets. I've been making those eyebrows a bit more funky, so there'll be some interesting developments in his evolution here soon. But as you can see, he wants to eat everybody. He started off as a pretty regular looking Muppet. I'll do a comparison of his evolutions, but you can see today he's pretty bloodthirsty. I mean, look at this guy. Yeah, I think he forgot to clean his jacket there, Mike. So anyhow, I don't think I have any other comments there. So, folks of the interwebs, thanks again for joining me here tonight to get a little GCD. And I have one more message. Maybe.
There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice.
Watch out, folks. Stay vigilant. Watch your six. Be aware. They got Ted twice. Catch you folks next time.
Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. And the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Out in the holler where the secrets creep, garbage can dudes digging mighty deep. Secret societies, shadows in the pines. Operation GCD of American rebels design. Double J searching deep in his brain hole, past layers of melted hops and bone resin. From cults to cover-ups, we're talking about all of that. So watch your sixth friend and the truth we trust. The world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Operation GCD with an Appalachian grin. Adventures and shenanigans, we're diving right in. Join us on the journey and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us to get a little GC. And the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo coats haunt the moon's pale beam. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, light things ablaze. Hell, the world's a puzzle, grunge rock ain't what it seems. Ancient alien cargo cults haunt the moon's pale beams. Cincinnati schemers, history's a haze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze. Double J's on the mic, lighting things ablaze.
Boom!